Hey everybody, Mary Fran Bontempo here. And before we get started with today's show, I just wanted to let you know that my new book, From Broken to Brilliant, How to Live a Brilliantly Resilient Life, is available on Amazon. Super excited about this book, which provides a roadmap of how to live a brilliantly resilient life. You'll get advice not only from me, but from so many dozens of our podcast guests who were kind enough to share their tips on how to reset, rise, and reveal your own brilliance. So head on over to Amazon, get a copy of the book From Broken to Brilliant, and now let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. What's your train wreck? Everyone has one. The question is, are you just visiting or are you going to live there? I'm Mary Fran Bontempo. Join me and let's learn how to come through those train wrecks, not broken, but brilliant. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Brilliantly Resilient, the podcast. I am here today with my guest, Patty Tashiro. Patty is, first of all, a mom, which is really where this whole journey started for her. She's also an author of a book on happiness, and she is certified in brain health recovery and in pain reprocessing therapy. She is the founder of Natural Brain Solutions. Patty, thanks so much for joining me today.
No, thanks so much for having me here.
So we talked a little bit before we started, where I hit record, on the fact that much of this idea of being brilliantly resilient and accessing your resilience and then finding your brilliance within it, unfortunately, begins with a challenge. And I noted that you were a mother and your challenge really involved your daughter, and that happened in 2016. So tell me a little bit about the origins of your work, and then we'll go further.
Yeah, sure. So in 2016, my husband and daughter went to play tennis together. We're heading home in the car. My daughter called to say, "We'll be home in 10 minutes. I'm getting dinner ready." I'm on the phone with her when they are rear-ended at 90 miles an hour by street racers.
Oh my God.
And I'm on the phone listening to it all. And as a mother, you can know the cries of hearing your child and not being able to get to her. And then my husband, I didn't know what was happening, and I'm asking him what happened. Are you okay? And then he says, an accident. There's been an accident. And so I dial 911 with our landline, which we
Thank
had
God
at the
back then.
time.
One, right, right. Oh God.
Yes, and I still have them on my phone. And, the first responders get there very quickly. And then I got in the car to go meet them there. And yeah, I did not recognize the back of our car. Our daughter was only 10 at the time, so she was in the back seat. So
Oh,
I rode with her in the ambulance, ER and all of that. And then they tell us she's had a subdural hematoma and trauma, which means a brain bleed. She's going into ICU to monitor her. The injury, I later find out, is fatal in 60 to 80% of
oh
all
dear God.
cases. Did not look that up at the time, thankfully.
Oh,
And so then we had a couple days in the hospital, just kind of waiting and watching and tests. And she was still, doing very well. She was able to chat with us. She was able to walk, to talk, but had serious post-concussive symptoms. So she gets out of the hospital, walking and talking. We're grateful. But the light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, the headaches, the fatigue, the dizziness, the,
oh,
vestibular issues. I had no idea or anything about the brain, even though I'd written a book on happiness. But then it was, okay, now what? Well, the doctors told us 3 weeks, 3 months, she'll be better. And 10 months after the accident, she was 10 times worse than the day she walked out of the
Oh my
hospital.
gosh. In
And
what
so,
respect? In what respect?
oh, crushing fatigue, more pain, more headaches,
Oh,
more light sensitivity. So she was essentially not able to make it through full days of school. I'd get calls of she needs to come home, or they're showing a movie in class, you have to pick her up. And it just consumed our world. And we're going to all the different doctors. And at one point, when I'm at my lowest and I'm thinking, I need help, our doctor said, unless she's barfing, she should be in school.
oh, for heaven's sake.
And that
Oh,
was
wow,
a
there's
tough,
bedside manner for you. Holy cow.
yeah, talk about needing resilience. And my daughter and I walked out of the appointment and she said to me, does he think I'm faking it? And at this point, she's 11. And I said, no. And I'm trying to be polite here because inside I was raging. I just said to her, I think he's out of ideas, but we're going to find someone who's got more ideas.
So let me
So,
just ask you, was that kind of a turning point for you? Because
yes,
I think many of us have had the experience of going to a doctor or a physician or whatever, and here's my problem. And they say, okay, here's what you have to do. And naturally, we don't know, which is why we go to them in the first place. And we do that thing,
yeah,
and it doesn't work. And then the next thing doesn't work, and the next thing doesn't work. And then it does feel sometimes like you're being dismissed, but it's because they don't know what else to do. So is that
yeah.
where you found yourself at that point?
Absolutely. And, in defense of him, there are times where we do need a little tough love. We do need a little, come on, you can do this. But this was not that time because we then, after I released them and found other physicians that had expertise in this area, found out her vitamin D had dropped to 10, which increases fatigue, pain, and all the other stuff she was experiencing. So before you do that tough love thing, you got to go through and make sure I've, crossed off all the things physically I need to check first.
Right.
Um, but it was absolutely a turning point where I felt like no one is going to get this girl off my sofa and back into school. I have got to do this. And so finding new doctors, but then that's when I started researching. And that was kind of heartbreaking because I found out there were things I should have been doing from the day she walked out of the hospital to help support her brain and recovering. And I mean, let's talk trauma, okay? Being in a medical situation like that, it was traumatic, not only for my husband and I, watching her with the beeps and the tests, but it had to be for her too. She
Mm.
asked us in that hospital 1,000 times, "Am I going to be okay? Am I going to be okay?"
And she was 10. I mean,
She
let's
was
put that
10.
into perspective too.
Yeah,
There's no real world experience that lets her as a child that young know anything other than I go to the doctor, I feel better. And then if
yeah.
that doesn't happen,
Maybe
and
get a
then what?
shot. Yeah, and then on you go. This was in ICU, and there's people all around you fighting for their lives. So it was, yeah, heartbreaking. So knowing what I know now, I would have, upon discharge, gotten her. I don't know if you've heard of EMDR therapy. It's a kind of therapy that helps process trauma and take that emotional charge away from it. I would have taken her straight in, not only her, but myself as well,
Sure.
to help take that emotional charge off of the event. That could have helped us tremendously, but you don't know what you don't know. And so that's what I started to research. What don't I know that I should
So
have known?
so should that be, and I'm pretty sure I know what your answer is going to be. Should something like EMDR therapy be a part of a physician's toolbox? I mean, generally educated physician. Just as a weird kind of aside, my husband's got some health issues, and we were asking the doctor, who's brilliant,
Yes.
about nutritional things. And she said to us, and I appreciate it because she said, we, meaning regularly educated Western medicine doctors, we don't know anything about nutrition. Like she pretty much said, I don't know. Like that's something
Yeah.
that you have to integrate. So this sounds like something that should be integrated into people who experience that.
100%. But so interesting now, how incredible is this doctor that you have? Because most doctors will not tell you that out of all their incredible research and continuing education, most of them have not taken one class on nutrition. Now imagine an architect not learning how to build a foundation. I mean,
Exactly.
nutrition should be foundational, right? For how we're fueling ourselves. So, wow, I want to congratulate you for finding that
I wanted to
doctor.
hug her. I just wanted to say
Yeah,
thank you because then at
yes,
least it allows you to prepare yourself and to know, okay, this isn't going to be part of it with this experience. So I have to go a little bit further. But you, and especially as you said at the beginning, you're traumatized, your husband's traumatized, it's your child. It doesn't get worse than that. So to have to you go into those medical situations and you think, all right, this is the guy who's going to help us or a woman or whomever.
yeah.
And then it somehow falls short. And then you're kind of at a dead end because a lot of them won't say, I've heard about this kind of thing, but I don't know about it. Look into this and maybe here's somebody you can start with. There's
Well,
so
what's
many things I
so,
want to talk to you about
I
this.
know what's so interesting though is also in our medical training, we've separated the mind from the body.
And
And
that's
the
right.
two,
That is exactly what I was just pointing to here. The brain,
yeah,
mind, body approach that you
yeah,
talk about. And I think
yes,
it's becoming more prevalent, but I do
yes,
think there's a piece in the medical world that sees it as a kind of a woo-woo thing.
yeah,
Maybe
not at
that's
all.
because they're looking at the brain as a purely physiological thing as opposed to, keeping the emotional part of it in there.
Yes, absolutely. And think about your nervous system and my nervous system are completely different based on every experience we've had throughout our life. And if you think of like Pavlov's dog, so what did Pavlov do? Conditioned a dog to salivate upon the ringing of a bell. Now we are all like
I do that.
Pavlov's human.
I do that
Yes,
occasionally.
yes.
Wait, there's food?
Yes, just the smell, and they know that about us, right? When you go into the mall. So, what have we all been conditioned for? So, take me. I had a dear friend from high school who passed away from cancer when he was 18. We were, just starting, our college lives. Anyway, he loved the Bird of Paradise. And when he went to see Shakespeare's grave in the UK, they all said you could bring whatever you want to lay on the grave. And he said a bird of paradise. So in my mind, I cannot see a bird of paradise without thinking of that dear friend of mine. Now, you may see a bird of paradise and think of your honeymoon in Hawaii. So your nervous system and my nervous system is wired completely differently. After the car accident, seeing ambulances and flashing lights would send my heart rate racing. But that is not taken into account when we start to look at our health, our wellness, our happiness. And that's the key of kind of pain reprocessing therapy of starting to look into how is your nervous system wired and is it working for you or against you? Do you have
Hmm.
to do some rewiring so that you can live more happily and pain free?
So we're talking about these things, and what I'm kind of getting from this conversation, and I'm guessing this is where the direction we're going to head in, because you talk about the brain's role in perpetuating pain. So I'm listening to you, and I'm wondering if the brain, because of our experiences and because of our emotional connection to them, can those emotional responses then trigger a physiological one, which keeps the body in a state of trauma?
Absolutely, 100%. And this is something that most doctors do not know. And so, because they don't know it, they aren't going to tell you that. And so think of those neural pathways that get made. So, a neural pathway of pain. So, take my daughter. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to pop a slide up here and I'll explain it to the
Sure.
people who are just listening. But take a look at this slide that shows a brain being scanned with acute pain, and those are in the kind of fight or flight survival parts of our brain. Now look over on the other side, there's a brain that is in chronic pain. So chronic pain is kind of defined between 3 to 6 months after an accident. Everybody, our body is made to heal. You should heal. But if you're not healing, you may have moved into where those neural pathways are creating pain. And don't let anyone tell you the pain is not real. It is 100% real. It's that your brain has these learned neural pathways and you have to retrain them away from pain.
Wow.
Now, if I,
My
isn't
mind is
that,
like blown. And
yeah,
again, for those who are not looking at these slides, the hot points, I'll say, for the what Patty's showing of the brain in the acute pain areas, they're in a different part of the brain completely than the chronic pain areas. And I tend to think, because we define the word pain as pain, you just assume that it's all going to be in the same place. And the fact that it isn't, according to what you're showing me, would seem to mean that the brain then is processing those kinds of pain differently.
absolutely. And it's the brain is misreading friendly signals as danger. And so I'll show you one more slide here. If I can get it to click over here. Um, that let's see here. This one here shows how you learn chronic pain over time. So 12 weeks after an accident, 19, 41, and 67. And look at the different kind of hot spots as you talk about how they change over time. So this explains my daughter. These are not her slides of her brain, but it explains why over from the time she was 10, obviously she gets out of the hospital and she's in acute pain. And so we do have to rule out structural physical pain. So it can be a fracture, it can be a tumor, it can be an infection, it can be nerve damage. But after that, it can be neural pathways that are creating that pain. And the pain is 100% real. And I will tell you a funny story from my own life. So I had that traumatic experience with my daughter on the phone in the car. 3 days after she gets back from the hospital, she's lying on the sofa. I'm walking down the sofa or walking down the stairs towards her, looking at her on the sofa, and my back seizes up in pain, absolutely seizes in pain. Like, take your breath away. And I'm like, oh. And my daughter, being the little funny lippy kid that she is, was like, Mom, you weren't even in the car. What are you doing? I'm the one covered in bruises over here. And, we laughed about it. And I ended up going to a chiropractor, going to sort out the pain in my back. Now, fast forward 2 years later, she is at an event at school. She leaves this event so upset by what she is seeing in this theater, and she's calling me crying on the phone. I am not kidding you. I'm standing in the same kitchen I was standing when I was on the phone with her during this accident, and my back in the exact same spot seizes up. Now, this time I had not heard of pain reprocessing therapy or how your emotions or trauma can create physical pain in your body. I just thought, this is crazy. It went away within a few minutes, but it has taught me that all pain is real, but it's a message that is coming to teach you something. And as you know, in resilience, everything is coming to us to teach us something, to emerge something that we have within that we need to bring out. And so this whole process has just kind of blown my mind of the power of the brain, the power of the mind, and how it really can derail us if we don't learn how we can rewire our brain to work for us, not against us.
Well, and I think to your point, the first step in that is paying attention. Your body is not, and this is a really interesting concept because it almost makes you recognize that there are two kinds of pain. There is the actual physical, oh my God, my arm's broken, the bone is broken kind of pain.
Yes,
That's
structural pain, we
right,
call that.
exactly.
Yes.
That physiological, something's physically wrong with my body pain. But that residual kind of pain is another way of your body telling you that there's a trauma that hasn't been dealt with. Is that what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, so they tend to call it neuroplastic pain, which is comes from those neural pathways. And the plastic part tells you it can be malleable, it can be changed. And a
Huh.
lot of people go to doctors, so much pain, fibromyalgia, IBS, migraines, back pain, neck pain. And so many doctors say to them, there's nothing wrong. I mean, yeah, you have a little bulging disc here, but lots of people have bulging discs like that and no pain. And it's heartbreaking to the person who's looking for answers.
Solution. Yep.
Yeah, but if that doctor doesn't know about neuroplastic pain, then you're going to leave there thinking they didn't believe me. They think I'm faking it, just like my daughter.
So this is about the brain's role in perpetuating pain, but we're talking about then the next step. Once you have that experience, you talk about getting to the root causes of the pain. So now in your daughter's, and this is where it gets really tricky, I would imagine, because you're experiencing physical symptoms. You are experiencing physical pain, or in your daughter's case,
Yes,
the light sensitivity and all
crushing.
that. So you
Yes,
naturally think there has to be a physical solution. Give me a pill, give me a therapy, give me a something.
yes,
So if the doctor tells you there's nothing wrong with you, but you're in pain, where in
yeah,
the world do you go next? Where do you even
yeah.
start?
That is the biggest problem because we are wired to for safety to know that like if my ankle is hurting it is because I have got a twisted ankle or a sprain or there's something broken, but we don't know how to move ourselves out of it. And like you say, that first thing you mentioned was awareness. So awareness is the best. You also have to know there's certain personality types or certain people who have experienced things in their lives. A lot of people, if you've heard of those adverse childhood experiences, those ACEs scores, if you've heard of those, it's simple questions, 10 questions. Like if you've experienced any one of these 10 things in your childhood, it puts you at a much higher risk for having pain and a host of other things.
Hmm.
So you have to ask yourself, do I fall into one of those? Am I a perfectionist? Am I a people
Geez, what's that?
pleaser?
I don't know what that is.
You've never met anyone like that, I'm
No, I
sure.
don't know anybody like that at all.
Yes. People pleaser, do-gooder. There's lots of characteristics that put you at a higher chance for experiencing this. It's kind of a cruel prank by the universe that I'm trying so hard, and then this is coming to me. And so then you have to ask yourself, what is that pain trying to teach me? What is it trying to tell me? Sometimes it's about setting boundaries. Sometimes it's about communicating. Sometimes it's about not only saying no to others, but saying yes to yourself. Like, what have you been denying yourself of getting outside, taking a break, getting off this, rat race for, 10 minutes, go for a walk in nature. So there's certain things you have to ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? And how can I, learn from this to get to the other side?
So this whole idea, this is really fascinating to me because I I generally walk around with my shoulders like up around my ears because I carry this ridiculous amount of tension that as you're speaking, I'm recognizing is really not necessarily a result of my current circumstances. And that, it sounds to me like when the doctor says there's nothing wrong and you look at your day-to-day life and you go, why am I feeling like this? There's nothing wrong that I should be worried about. But then you're starting to talk about childhood things and past experiences. And I imagine that each of those things, as we experience them, leaves an imprint. It leaves an imprint in the brain, it leaves an imprint in the body. And then anything that's traumatic that kind of wakes up those little trauma receptors
Yes,
set this in motion. So, first of all, am
absolutely.
I reading that correctly? And second of all, we have all got so much baggage. Where do you even
Yes,
start? Like with your
yes.
daughter, where did you even begin to start to help her process all of this?
Yeah, so now that she's older and not a little 10-year-old living in my house where I could use her as a human guinea pig and, oh, let's take out gluten, let's take out dairy, let's, all of that stuff. Now that she's an adult, I will say, you know what? I kind of found this resonates with me. Would you watch this, podcast or check this out? And if this resonates with you, because now she has to lead it. She's, 19 now. Then can I'm happy if you want to take this course or something and work your way through. And actually, it was pain reprocessing therapy. She went online and they have an online course there that is wonderful and very low cost. And she just started working her way through it and would text me, "Oh my God, this explains my entire life." And so then, yeah, she starts, working through it on her own. And if she has questions, she can come ask me. I got certified myself so I could help other people. But, there's this fine line with, parent child. And once she gets, to be an adult, she's got to make her way.
Right.
And what may resonate for me may not resonate for her. And that goes back to all of our individual nervous systems. And there's been, believe me, plenty of places I've taken her where they've said, take, vision therapy, do these sorts of things. And it absolutely was way too much for her nervous system and would leave her shattered for 3 days in bed. And so now that I know more about the nervous system and retraining it, she has to lead that and she has to do with what is in her capacity and
Right.
start chipping away at that.
So,
So for you and I, looking into somatic practices, looking into simple things. I don't know if you've heard of
tell me what that
havening.
word is. This is where I want to get the specifics. Give me some specific ideas about what pain reprocessing therapy entails and what you just somatic, is that what you said?
Yeah, so pain reprocessing therapy is starting to get curious. Essentially, whenever anyone starts to experience chronic pain, you start to live in fear of that pain. And then anything you think, oh, that triggered my pain, I'm now going to start avoiding that because I don't want to feel that pain. So then your world starts to get really small because you're avoiding everything you think it triggers your pain, whether it's gluten, dairy, lights, sound, neon lights, whatever it might be. So it's about starting to get curious, learning how to create safety in your brain. How can we tell our brain in this world that is so utterly unsafe? How can we start to train it to be safe and experience safety? And then a lot of that is somatic practices. So getting back, if you've heard of Dr. Peter Levine and his somatic experiences and starting to deal with trauma, there's a simple one I can teach you is just havening, if you've heard of that or not. It's just gently rubbing your hands together, or they also have what's called a butterfly hug, and taking a few moments. If you think about it, like you were talking about with your shoulders up here, all of us are bracing ourselves
Hmm.
so much of the time. And think about people in the workforce. getting an email or having your boss or maybe a negative colleague come around the corner. We're constantly in that fight or flight. Am I safe? Am I not? So we have to learn what works for our own unique nervous systems to bring the temperature down, to teach ourselves, I am safe and I'm feeling this sensation, let's say in my back. Like if I were to get, that one I talked about earlier, I can say, oh, I see you. You're coming to tell me that you're afraid that you're out of control and that your daughter is injured and you actually cannot help her. And so just that awareness and then starting to have a gentle conversation with ourselves. A lot of the times you just have to realize that that little voice in your head is a drill sergeant that is like pushing you too hard and you need to take a time out. So how can we start building into our daily schedule little things like havening, going out for a walk outside? Did you know most Americans spend 93% of their day inside?
Hmm.
So that's 7% of the day where we're outside, and our nervous system, think of our reptilian brain. We've only for a very short period of time in our history been living in these climate controlled boxes, driving to and from with our heat and our air. So, in a way, our body is like, what is this? And we need to get outside and to feel sun on our face. And yeah, it helps with so many things from
Well,
sleep to your mood.
I think those experiences too allow the brain to process shifts in our carefully controlled environments and lives. And, it's just like they say, you have to expose yourself to the things that you're afraid of. We have to expose ourselves, our brains, to the things that we just generally aren't exposed to for the simple reason that it builds resilience in the brain in shifting back and forth.
Yes.
Like, okay, this is a new thing, but it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And it's interesting you use the word exposure because essentially what pain reprocessing therapy is kind of controlled, careful exposure and starting to reframe things, starting to, just look at the sensations, not as pain, but as, oh, this is a little teacher who's come to chat with me. What have I got to learn from this? What am I not doing that I need to do? And start to just listen to our own intuition. When you talk, one thing I love about your book is about you have it within you. This healing, I hate to say it, it is within you. And for so many years, I went begging around from doctor to doctor to doctor, therapist, please fix my daughter. She's broken. But actually, no, what was broken was my thinking. And she is needing to heal. Now, how do you heal? It's starting to create safety, starting to create understanding.
So healing begins with, again, after a traumatic experience, healing begins with creating safety. I've used this expression many times when talking about my own residual trauma from my son's addiction issues and all of that. Those experiences almost create memories on a cellular level. That's the way I say it. It's like cellularly imprinted. So when something goes that deep, you have to recognize that that can be the source of all kinds of other trauma because you're just triggered. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, something's happening, something's happening. And while it might not have anything to do with the initial trauma, your brain and then your body subsequently reacts in a similar fashion. That trauma, the trauma's back, the bad thing's back, the bad thing's back. And I think it goes back to this whole idea of learning how to, again, process the things that happen to us and recognize that one thing does not necessarily lead to another. And I think that's what happens in our brains, maybe, that it creates these kind of timelines. Okay, this happens now. That means this is next. And that's not necessarily always the case. So this idea of retraining your brain and learning how to maybe compartmentalize these things and recognize that they aren't so connected that one painful experience is naturally going to lead to another is a part of this. That's my long-winded way of
No, it's 100%. And it comes back to that conditioning and that ringing that bell, or for me, seeing a bird of paradise. So for you, there are definite moments seared in your memory. And those, just like the Body Keeps the Score book, it's in your body. And so how can we start to move that out so we can come back into balance? And so for me, getting a phone call won't send me spiraling because I'm worried I'm out of control. Having that, just taking that beat and knowing I can face this, I can face anything, it's going to be okay. We can work our way through. Um, it's just, reframing and that new conversation you can have with yourself and getting out of that constant bracing. You and I both know with these things, you're bracing for your child of, are they going to be okay? Are they not okay? Are they going to be? And it's stressful, as you well know. So how can we start to bring that temperature down?
I I loved every single thing about this conversation because it's I've been trying to figure myself out for a very long time. And a lot of this makes such sense because I do feel, and I think most of us do, because let's face it, we've all had awful, traumatic,
Yeah.
painful experiences, and we want to keep ourselves safe. But I think that the whole idea of looking at our lives with kind of intention, recognizing that one thing doesn't necessarily lead to another, but more important, recognizing that there is an emotional, for lack of a better way of putting it, brain component attached to trauma that can continue to work on your body in negative ways after you've experienced something like that. Patty, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I'm so delighted that you joined me today. First of all, is there anything you want to leave us with? Maybe one little nugget that you can help us start on this path of figuring out how to rewire our brains after trauma. And number two, tell us where we can learn more about you and your work.
Well, for me as a mother, I knew when doctors said, when our daughter was 11, a doctor said to her, "You may have headaches forever." I didn't believe that. We walked out of that appointment and said, "That's not true for you." I believed she could get better. I believed she could live a happy, joyful life. And so I fought for it. I turned over every stone. And what probably breaks my heart most in this world is a lot of people don't believe they're worth it.
Hmm.
And if there was one thing I could do is just have people know you are worth it and you can get better and you are worth turning over every stone you can until you get there. So that would be my one thing. If there's one thing I could have everyone believe, you are worth it. You are here for a reason and you have gifts to share. And if you're lying in your bed with a migraine, you're not able to share those gifts, and we need you. So that would be the one thing I would say there. If people would like to hear more, just find me at Natural Brain Solutions. I regularly run courses. And if I cannot help you, I will refer you out to someone who I think can help you, because, you don't know what you don't know. And so when people come to me, if I think, oh, you've got this, and I know someone who's a specialist in that, I will send you to them. But if I think I can help you, I'll tell you what I do and we'll see if it can work out. But my greatest hope is that you just don't give up on yourself and you find that person or modality, or finding it even within yourself, because there's so many great books out right now that can help guide you on your way.
Patty, again, I am so delighted that you joined me today. Patty Tashiro, everybody, please check out what Patty is giving us as resources. Look her up because this is clearly something that all of us, and I mean all of us, can utilize in our lives to live healthier, happier lives. And if you still need a little bit more inspiration, head on over to brilliantlyresilient.net. Sign up for the Brilliance bit that will come to you. Patty will be a part of that when all of this airs, and it's that little magic box that pops up. And I will see you next time on the next episode of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Take care, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Join our Facebook group and follow us on YouTube to be inspired with tools to reset, rise, and reveal your brilliance.